This is the Deathadder V4 Pro, and this represents the best of gaming mice and unfortunately the worst, because this mouse is almost perfect, but you shouldn't buy it. For a reference point, the Deathadder V3 Pro and its spin-offs are decent. I used the Deathadder V3 Pro a lot on release. It was my main for around 6 months, but it did and still has its problems. The scroll wheel had issues with limbo jumping, often caused by dust getting inside the encoder, and because the notches are rather light anyway. The main switches felt really hollow and low quality when compared to mechanical ones, but this was at the start of the optical switch era, so that can be forgiven, as most optical switches at that time didn't feel great anyway. And the coating was the coarse matte texture that felt like it could scrape your skin off until it reached your bones, although they did change the coating in some of the other spin-offs. But maybe the real goal with this coating was to bait Asus ROG into using something similar in their mice. Thankfully, the Deathadder V4 Pro has addressed most of the remaining issues that the Deathadder V3 had. The biggest one outside of the coating is the scroll wheel, which is now optical, so there's no longer a mechanical component reading scroll inputs, which should hopefully improve reliability. It's a bit too soon to say though, but for now the scroll wheel feels pretty much perfect. The scroll feels nice and tactile, but still easy to continuously scroll with. The coating is obviously using the smooth touch coating, so that's the same being used for the other Deathadder V3s and Viper V3 Pro. The switches have apparently been improved, and I'll get into more detail with this momentarily. For now, I'll quickly blast through the remaining improvements. The mouse feet are a bit larger, with there just being 2 large pieces and one surrounding the sensor, so it should create a more smooth, consistent feel. The weight has been reduced by around 7 grams. The battery life has been increased up to 150 hours with 1000 Hz polling on a charge. Then there's a load of performance improvements as well, which I'll get to, as I think this is what's being used to increase the price. Overall, the quality has been massively improved, and Razer also said that this is built with 90% post-consumer recycled materials and bio-based polyamide fiber derived from renewable sources like plants and castor oil, without compromising performance. Despite the self-imposed restrictions, the build quality of this mouse is fantastic. So if you buy this mouse, you can sleep easily at night knowing that you've done your part to offset the carbon footprint of billionaires in their private jets and super yachts. The quality is so impressive that when I used my Deathadder V3 Pro again, I was like, was it really this bad? As this feels so much better. Even though the improvements don't look like much on paper and that the shape hasn't changed, the quality difference from the original Deathadder V3 Pro really does make this feel like a V4 upgrade. But when compared to other mice I've used recently, this doesn't stand out as much. One of the reasons for that is the optical switches. They're better than the previous ones on the Deathadder V3, but there's still this hollow cheapness to them. I guess they're using Razer switches again, but slightly improved, as they feel similar yet more refined than the Deathadder V3 switches. To me, they just don't feel as nice as some of the others on the market, like the Omron Opticals or the FE switch, which I believe are modified and cheaper versions of Omrons. However, I need to be clear with this. I am saying this from the perspective of someone who uses a load of mice and will notice and pay more attention to these minor differences. The average person will likely not notice nor care about these switches, and if you do, you will likely get used to them after a few days. These switches are not a deal breaker. Outside of this minor drawback, the quality, as I've said multiple times now, is amazing. It's almost flawless. The shape is unchanged from the previous Deathadder V3. The main physical change is probably the side buttons have been split to make them easier to tell apart from each other. Outside of that is a great ergo shape that's suitable for regular sized hands. The dongle, or the orb, is a fantastic and practical design. The standard light setup shows wireless connection strength, battery and polling rate. The light is also subtle as well, so it won't distract you in game like the lighthouse that Pulsar supplies. Before we get to the performance and pricing though, Synapse. It's the same as it's always been. One improvement I noticed is that it didn't force close any games I had running when I plugged it in, which is nice. It seems to be a bit less than it was before, and I used it a couple of months ago for the Razer Pro Click V2 Vertical. It's obviously still filled with bloat, but now with AI bloat. It does have some additional features as well. There's now a built-in raw Excel feature with slightly limited functionality but a more user-friendly UI, and sensor rotation, which featured in the Viper V3 Pro. These don't require Synapse to be open in the background to work. A cool feature that I was unsure whether or not it required Synapse to always run, the polling rate switcher, where you can set separate polling rates for when you're in or out of game, does require Synapse to run in the background to work, but I'd imagine that this is because it needs a way to detect whether or not you're actually in game. Basically, the turd that is Synapse has been polished. Performance-wise, this thing is packing with the Razer Focus Pro 45K optical sensor Gen 2. It has 45,000 DPI, 1,000 DPI more than Logitech and 3,000 DPI more than Asus ROG. That's not all. The improved wireless performance makes this mouse at least 0.5 milliseconds faster than its competitors. Wow. There's been a load of improvements internally to make this a very high performing mouse with consistent and efficient wireless connectivity. But out of all the improvements made to the sensor and wireless performance, the only thing that I'd actually notice would be the improved battery life. The other performance upgrades just seem to be completely pointless. Is there anything wrong with the Deathadder V3 Pro's 30K optical sensor? Or even the Deathadder V3 Hyperspeed's 26K optical sensor? No. And I bring this up because the price of this is, well, it's around $170. This is an insane price. We recently ran a poll which got like 3,000 responses, which is great, and most people felt that the $120 mark is the maximum that they would pay for a flagship gaming mouse, with $90 being second, and the lowest result was the $150 or over with just 9%, and this is $30 more than that base number. That poll massively shifted my perspective, along with the fact that I also bought a flat, so I am now burdened with the debt of home ownership until I die. I can't help but feel that these performance improvements, even though in theory they're great, are one of the reasons why prices continue to rise. Now, I know tariffs exist, but I have a feeling these price rises would still exist regardless of tariffs, because the major manufacturers raised their prices anyway with each flagship before the tariffs even existed. And these performance improvements provide no tangible benefit for the majority of people that will buy this product, especially when you consider that what they had already is pretty much perfect anyway. Even the improved battery life, which is great, isn't really that much of an issue anymore because everybody is now used to charging wireless mice. It's become a habit. Having said that, after prolonged usage with the Deathadder V4, maybe I'll notice the lesser battery capacity in other mice. To me though, this constant one-upmanship is a cost that consumers have to pay just so Razer and other companies can say their numbers are better than their biggest competitors. And it's like everyone knows that this makes no difference and that these numbers are mostly pointless for the end user, but these companies still fight over them anyway. Don't get me wrong, the technology in this mouse is impressive. A lot of effort has probably been put into this mouse. But what's the point? You could have put the 26, 30 or 35K sensor in this, told everyone it was a brand new one, and I don't think anybody would have noticed. I understand that this is a flagship product and that it is meant to feature Razer's best technology, but I think the only way I would ease criticism of this product is if they had brought out a non-pro version at the same time, something that keeps all the physical improvements of the mouse, but with a lesser sensor with 1000Hz polling. But I'd imagine that this isn't an option as it would impact sales of the flagship, but I guess it could be something we will see a bit further down the line. To give Razer credit, it is something that they sometimes do. I have really enjoyed using this mouse. This is an upgrade over the Deathadder V3 Pro. The quality improvements are amazing, which I really want to make clear. It is a significant improvement. It's not like they've done a Logitech and just added a slightly improved sensor and left the rest of the garbage untouched. They have provided an upgraded product that feels better to play with than the previous version, but it is in no way worth the money. I guess we will see what happens in the future, whether or not these prices are sustainable, and I sympathize a bit because I can imagine the uncertainty of tariffs doesn't help, but I think that these prices are just going to push people further into cheaper AliExpress mice than ever before. Also, I got this for free. Razer sent this out to me, which I'm very thankful for, because seriously, I don't think I could afford this mouse. It's really disappointing to see how expensive these things have become. My honest recommendation is that you should only buy this mouse if you can get it for around $140 maximum. I mean, you could just get a previous generation Deathadder V4 Pro, and the truth is, you'd perform the exact same with that as you would with this, providing that the scroll wheel doesn't give out. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I mean, would you buy this? Are you thinking of buying this anyway? If so, why? I'm not going to insult you in the comments, it's just good to get a different perspective of things. If you want to check out some rather underrated gaming keyboards, well, there's a video on screen now for you to watch.